I'm Emily Ehman here for the Big Ten Network, and I'm kicking off the start of a series of interviews with important figures around the Big Ten to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Title IX. These interviews will focus on the impact that Title IX has had on women's sports. Who better to kick things off with than the head coach of the Maryland women's basketball team, Brenda Frese. Coach Frese, thank you so much for being here. To start, what impact has Title IX had on your life?
Well, thanks for having me. And oh my goodness, I mean, a tremendous impact. And, I think if you go back and you look at, probably where things started, even when I look at my mom and, where things and limited opportunities for her as a female, coming up, she was kind of forced to be a cheerleader because there weren't a lot of sports to, the opportunity for me to get a full ride scholarship to pay for my education in the time that I played. And now, you fast forward and to be the head coach here at the University of Maryland and to see, just how far the game has come, even from the time, I played, is truly remarkable.
You mentioned your mom. Aside from your mom, who have been some of the most important trailblazing role models that have inspired you to do what you do now?
Yeah, I'd probably start with my college coach, June Olkowski, who recruited me to the University of Arizona. A tremendous impact to be able to have a female role model at the time, kind of opened my eyes, when I was there through a series of injuries of, hey, maybe coaching, one day and at the collegiate level is something that I could be able to do. And then, I'd have to say Debbie Yao. I mean, she hired me. She was the athletic director at the time here in Maryland. And she was a tremendous mentor for me at the right time. She had played basketball. She had coached basketball. And, it was, just a tremendous opportunity for me to have such an important mentor, at the time in my life here at Maryland.
With your team, how have you worked to educate your players and even staff on Title IX and the women that came before them?
Yeah, I try to every opportunity I can. I mean, I'm really fortunate here in Maryland. There's only been 3 head coaches, which is really rare. And, Dottie McKnight, who first started here, to then Chris Weller, they're around, so every opportunity I can utilize when they're in the building, they come to a game, bring them in the locker room, have them at a practice. And, they share their stories. I'll share them back. Chris, tells the stories of them driving the vans and making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for the kids on the road. And, last time I checked, our kids aren't in vans, they're now on charter flights and they're not eating any peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So, really just talking about, the people and that have come before us to pave the way, for us to kind of have these opportunities now that we're afforded to have.
Seems like a lot of those head coaches back in the day, they had to play multiple roles, whether that was head coach, assistant coach, like you're saying, nutrition staff, essentially. When they come to talk to your team, what's one story that stuck with you?
Oh, I mean, Chris has so many. So, I do think, when she would talk about how she herself, on top of being the head coach, would prepare the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and make sure that the team was fed. I know Dottie was in dual roles, like you talked about, coaching multiple sports. And so just to think about everything that you have to do in coaching and then take on nutritionists and driving the team vans and all part of your day. I mean, it's incredible to see what's been done before us.
Since you were young playing the game, how have you seen women's basketball grow in terms of equity?
Well, first I would say, I mean, the game has grown just in sheer numbers, but in equity, when you talk about, when I was in college, when we played games, we were, really happy if it made the school newspaper. And now you see, all of these games being televised, where if they're not on television, you can get them on the internet, you can pull them up, social media now, the access that you have. There's just that national recognition for, teams, individuals, now you're seeing the NIL that has come out. So, I mean, my goodness, there have been so many changes in such a short amount of time. It's been tremendous to see.
In terms of coverage, your team has garnered so much coverage just with the success that you've had. What is the main way that you've seen coverage of women's basketball evolve over the years?
Just, like you're talking about, is the exposure factor. And, I think the single-handedly, the two most, proficient areas is, television, being on TV, being in, millions of households that are able to watch you. And then social media, the fact that it's instant, you can pull up any article, stat, quote, during the game, as soon as it's over, you can find ways to follow, your favorite teams. So that it's kind of like that 24/7 access. I mean, you're able to have kind of at your fingertips anytime you want to be able to have it.
There was a 30-year-old study published in 2019 that showed that 95% of sports media coverage is of men's sports. As someone obviously who is very closely tied to the women's sports community, where can we as media improve or do more?
Wow, that's a great stat. It saddens me. I wouldn't have thought it was that high, but again, I think the more coverage like you're doing right now, right? You're bringing on a female head coach, the more times that we're able to put that, access out there for people to view and to be able to see. I know my mother-in-law gets very upset if she picks up the Washington Post and we have a big win and we're buried on the fourth page, and, the men have had a loss and they're on the front page. So, I think, kind of, trying to equalize, that coverage, I think matters and is important for, young kids growing up to be able to see the value, in women athletics.
On that same note, where do you think that women's basketball and women's athletics as a whole can still grow?
Yeah, I think in a lot of areas, I think we're fortunate, as one of the big three sports in women's basketball that we are able to get so much coverage, but it's still across the board. When you talk about the Olympic sports, the coverage still isn't there. So I think, again, continuing to make it a priority of, men's lacrosse is on television X amount of times, making sure women's lacrosse, has the same due. Same with women's volleyball, and again, across the sports, I think you could, go head to head with a lot of them. So I think just, again, the coverage, the access, showing the value of women's sports, as being equally important.
You were the first woman inducted into the Washington, D.C. Metro Basketball Hall of Fame in the class of 2021. What would you tell a woman who strives to be the first of something?
Yeah, dream big, was an incredible surprise to me, I've got to say. I mean, it also, I think it shows you, where we're trying to get to, it's taken a long time, that almost too long that to take place. But at the same point, I think, that's not something I've ever gone after. It's you put your head down, you try to work hard, do things the right way. And, then I think as a society now, as we continue to understand the value of women and women in sports, we'll continue to elevate, all the greatness that's out there.
What's the number one way that we can all be advocates and help push women's sports forward even more?
I think continuing to support it, when you're watching it, you're attending it, you're, looking it up to be able to view. I mean, those numbers matter. I oftentimes hear, obviously that, men are able to, they spend a lot more time watching sports. And I think for women, we've got to be able to put a priority there as well and be able to support one another, through the viewership.
And I think that we've seen that the viewership is there. When they put it on these networks, the viewership is there. We see the fans are engaged, whether that's getting butts in seats or turning on the television to watch your favorite women's sports team. It's definitely growing, but we still have a lot more growing to do. Coach Frese, thank you so much for joining me. And it's been an honor to speak to you and to hear how Title IX and women's sports has impacted your life.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.